think here in just 2 shakes, we should be live.
Great. Thank you, Jory. And thanks everyone for joining another episode of the OpenJS Foundation's Cross-Project Council meeting. Today is the 25th of February in 2020. And yeah, let's get things started. Jory or anyone, do we have any announcements before we get into the agenda?
Yes.
Yay.
So really big week. We have extended the CFP deadline for OpenJS World through Friday. So please tell your friends, get those talk submissions in. And apologies for, of course, the minor issues on the submission tool last week, but we're extended, so we should get all your talks. The other thing is, of course, we are excited about OpenJS Collaboration Summit. There is a collab summit planning meeting immediately following the CPC meeting at 1 p.m. Eastern, and then a standards meeting at 2 p.m. Eastern today. So those are other fun activities happening. And I think there was something else, but I've already forgotten it. So if I think of it, I will chime in with it.
I don't know if you wanted to mention that registration's open for OpenJS World.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yes, and registration is open, as Michael just shared. So definitely get your, go ahead and book your ticket as soon as you can, book your hotel as soon as you can. We do expect the hotel block to fill up really quickly. And at the same time, you can also register for the Collab Summit, and you can register for a discounted ticket on the Open Source Summit North America or Embedded Linux Conference, which are happening concurrently in Austin. So.
Cool, thank you. Anything else, folks, for announcements? I have one that I can share. A couple of weeks ago, I did an open office hours. I did one before the holidays that was focused on Node.js. And over the holidays, I thought about it and I created an issue. I think I've kind of gone over this already, but I did an open office hours 2 weeks ago. I have another one this Thursday. I talked to Wes Todd about Express and spending a little bit of time focusing on that because Wes has been putting in a lot of effort trying to get folks involved with Express and triaging issues and getting some movement there. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time on Express. I've been trying to figure out a good, like, kind of canonical location for the open office hours that I can, you know, post meeting stuff, as well as maybe folks could open issues if they have things they're particularly interested in. And so conveniently, I haven't finished the pull request that would bring in admin policy docs, which would talk about creating repos, but I'll ask the group here. And I can open an issue, but I'm trying to move a little quickly since the meeting's on Thursday. If anyone has any objections to me opening up a repo in the org for open office hours? Any objections or concerns or comments?
Seems good to me.
All right, cool. Feel free to let me know if you know, I can always make changes or whatever. I just wanted to ask first. Cool. So sorry to jump into that before the agenda here, but I thought I'd ask. So anything from like the board or anything like that?
I don't have any specific updates, but there is going to be, I think this week, there's the board meeting on Friday. So if there's any issues that people have that they would like me to bring or just bring up, just let me know.
Question, Michael, do you know if they're planning to do the public board session immediately after this time?
That is always the plan. When it doesn't happen, it's because the other session ran too late. We did discuss extending the meeting so that we would have more time. I'd have to go look at the calendar to see if that happened. Let me just look at my calendar. It starts at 1. I think that's the regular time, though. So, I mean, I guess the answer is the plan is always yes, just sometimes the other one overruns. So,
Yeah,
and I don't. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's an interesting question because I oftentimes wonder that. And I know there's been a comment in the past that maybe public session should happen first so public folks can join and kind of know like the time to join and such.
Yeah, I did mention that. The comment was sometimes it's good to have had the, like sometimes we need the private section to discuss things so that we can include them in the public session. So you'd potentially lose that. And that's where the counter suggestion was to try and extend the meeting so that we have more time. Now, I just trying to think, let me look at the previous one. When did it start? Because I don't think we changed that.
What if rather than like a public like version of the meeting, it was more like it went first and it was more of like a FAQ period, you know, and then it could roll into close public FAQs and then have a meeting, because I'm not sure, I don't know. What do you think about that?
You mean just where people could come and ask questions, or?
Yeah.
I think that's something we'd have to get the input from all of the board members.
Yeah.
In terms of, you know, I'm happy to be in, you know, have a time where people could come and ask questions. I just need to see if that resonates with everybody else.
Yeah, this is Robin. This is something I would support, but I would say probably we could do both. And I'll go back and double check on the calendar item. You're right. I think we were supposed to extend it moving forward. So I'll check on that. And I love the idea of adding some Q&As as well, or FAQs.
I wonder if we could incorporate a board session into just our AMA overall program, in addition to, you know, whatever time we want to add on. But that might be an interesting topic.
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Yeah, that would definitely work.
It could even be a little bit broader, you know, open governance and how the OpenJS Foundation operates and board, you know, questions and such.
Love it.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
speaking of AMAs, really quickly, our next AMA is coming up with WebHint, March 4th, 9 a.m. Pacific, and I'll add that to the notes.
Okay, great.
Great, and it's on the calendar too. Of course,
It
I'm
sure
gonna
is.
check. Great, cool. Anything else before we get into the agenda? No. Cool. So the first thing.
Sorry, I've got one thing. Just I'm writing up an issue, but I thought I'd mention it here. We need to really soon now open up the nominations for the next year's non-impact voting CPC members. There's a 2-week period, and this current term that we've got is ending at the end of March. And I've just realized that this means that we need to start working on this within like the next week or 2 at the very most in order to actually hit that deadline. Just thought I'd mention this, but I'll file an issue about it momentarily.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and I assume that we lined those up so that actually the members from the impact projects as well, those terms may actually be up for like reconfirmation or whatever the project wants to do. So we should probably do it more broadly than just the non-impact.
Yes, but we don't. Those don't have this sort of harder deadline of us having imposed a 2-week nomination period before the election. But yes, that also needs to start happening real soon. The impact projects are aware of this. I'll amend my issue to cover them as well and file it within the next 5 minutes or so.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. All right, cool. Great. So I will jump into the agenda here. The first item is actually from the Summit repo. This is issue 249, and it is travel fund questions for project community members. Jory, you've got this one. Do you want to give some context?
Yeah, sure. So we opened this after discussion on our last collab summit planning meeting about the fact that when we go to share, news and information about the event with maintainers and their communities, one of the questions we really want to be able to answer for them as thoroughly as possible is, how can you make use of this fund, and what we realized was that where possible, we should make it pretty clear what the requirements are, or sort of what the guidelines are for people to request these funds, but also what those should be when a project maintainer may need to evaluate whether like a contributor actually meets those requirements. And so that's sort of a piece that's not crystal clear. There's another related issue about privacy around these requests as well. And so I think we were hoping to get some clarity here so that so especially as we get closer to the event, people start booking their travel, we have really good answers or clear answers.
Okay.
I mean, and I guess you had a good list as the suggestion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that list was more distilled from like other documentation and issues that we've had around this conversation, but I think it still falls short of answering all the questions.
Right. So what are the key, what are the key things that are still missing, do you think?
In my mind, it's, with the process for a person to make the application, like, oh, I'm Jory and I want to apply for support on the hotel and ticket cost or whatever. That's clear, but what's less clear is like that verification step that says Jory is in fact, a contributor to jQuery and is eligible, right? Like what's the beyond being, the honesty policy and self-reporting, what guidelines do we have for both the person applying and also the maintainer to say, here's how you, like, here's what we're looking for.
Right. I guess I wonder, would it be one answer for all projects, or is it up to the project to determine what they consider as active enough?
That to me seems like a question to answer here. Like, I mean, I'm flexible about things, but if the group feels like we should leave some of this at the discretion of the maintainer, then great, let's just write that down,
Yeah. That's kind of what I mean, my first thought is it's going to be hard for us to be able to say consistently what would meet. Like you've got this nice one, which is like any member with a project or project community who has had recent sustained contributions to the project for the past 90 days or more is eligible. Now, if that was if there was like a way to automate checking that, but I don't think there is, right? Because there's different ways of having sustained contribution.
Right, and I think what we want to say is like we define, how the maintainer wants to define contribution is up to them, right? Like I would encourage contribution to be inclusive of, this person has been running our Twitter account, and attending TSC meetings and stuff like that. In addition to, or you know, the classical sense of contribution. And you know, this person has been submitting PRs and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, all of these projects have some kind of concept of core contributor. How close is what we need to those kinds of concepts?
Quick point of order. Jordan has his hand up, and okay, Tierney got promoted. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like the idea of leaving it up to individual projects, and I like the idea of automating it. So it seems like, I mean, I'm at the risk of being voluntold to build this myself. It seems like we could do something like a pull request template with a checklist that says like, check the project or projects that you're contributing on. And then whatever you've checked, we have some sort of GitHub action that automatically adds as reviewers the, you know, the contributors or the maintainers of those projects. And then as soon as at least one project has approved it, then the PR status gets approved and it can be auto merged or something, like, you know, like something along those lines. Like it shouldn't be a high friction thing. It should just kind of be like, we just want a single touch point to make sure that a random person isn't claiming affiliation with a project they aren't affiliated with. And, you know, yeah. Or does that idea seem viable?
I don't know. I mean, do we need to, in terms of like adding the maintainers, for some of them, we could potentially ask the, like the CPC members, certainly for the projects that have representation, we could ask the CPC members to be part of the reviewers, right?
Sure. I'm just thinking, but like in terms of scale, right? Like at the moment, the foundation has, I don't know, dozens of projects, maybe tens of projects. And like, but at some point it may have hundreds of projects, and like just kind of setting it up so that it just works as long as the person claims they're with some projects, and then the maintainers of those projects have validated that claim, we can clean up anything else later. And that can just like, we don't need manual involvement beyond that.
I guess though, like, how are you going to figure out that list of maintainers? I think your point of having like a group of people you could add for every project, I'm just not sure if it's as simple as saying.
I think the project can maintain that list themselves, right? Like,
yeah,
each project can just can go edit a config file that says, here are the people to tag for these requests for our project. And if there's nobody, it tags the CPC. And if there's somebody, it tags them. And right. Something like we could come up, I mean, this is off the top of my head, so I haven't thought it all through, but like, it seems like we can come up with some rules that take all the friction out of it.
Now, I don't know. Can you even tag people cross repos?
I mean, you can add anyone as a reviewer who has read access or higher on like explicit read access or any other access on the repo. So similarly, we could just, you know, as part of a maintainer adding people to the list of people to tag for their project, we can just add them with read access if they don't already have higher access on the repo, and then they become like eligible as reviewers.
And Miles has his hand up as well here.
Sure.
So just a couple thoughts to Jordan, to your point about like scaling. I'd like to encourage not necessarily thinking about this problem setting in a way that could scale to hundreds of projects. A, because it's unclear to me that our foundation has the intention to scale to that size to begin with.
Sure.
And separately, I think that like I think we actually already have the solution to this in place. We have a number of voting members that are elected to this council that you know, have volunteered to help lead. That is separate from whether or not they are doing that job. That's not the purpose of raising this. But you know, each of the impact level projects has 2 reps. In theory, those reps can act as people who should be able to review this for their projects. There are also people who run for the position of a rep for the at-large projects and incubating projects. And arguably, in running for that, they are volunteering to take on labor. I think that it is very reasonable at least to start to unblock this and help move it forward, to make that a responsibility of this council. You know, that could be as much as, you know, those reps knowing who the contact people at those projects are to reach out and confirm these things. But I think, you know, the CPC reps that currently exist should be sufficient to be the people who can kind of do this stamp or do the research to ensure that this stuff can move forward. And if we find that things are getting blocked or not moving fast enough, then we can maybe try to find a solution that would be faster. But I do think we should, I would urge against, you know, any engineering solutions or anything much more complicated than that until it actually proves to be a scaling issue.
Yeah, I agree. And we have been talking about this for a bit, so maybe we should move on. It seems
point
like
of order. Sorry, Joe, but Aguirre needs to be.
Yep, just got him. Thank you, Miles. It seems like the list that Jory has there is a good starting point to perhaps open a PR, and I encourage anyone, you know, to take that on and see how it fits into the travel fund documentation that we already have, and then in that PR we can kind of discuss it further and see if there are any other questions that need to be answered before we start, you know, reaching out to projects and such. Does that make sense?
And I would just add it, and I think the proposal of saying it's the CPC members and the reps from each of the projects being the ones who would be the initial approvers is a good starting point.
Yeah, agreed. Cool. So if anyone wants to take that up, that's a great PR to you know, be involved and move things forward. Otherwise, someone will pick it up. So okay, I'm gonna move on to the next issue unless anyone stops me in this moment right here. So moving on. The next issue is 469 in the cross-project council repo. This is populate the code of conduct panel. Jory and I were talking about this as the meeting started. I think we just need to reach out to folks and start to, you know, request some self-nominations for the panel. Is that accurate?
I think there were a few actions, like Brian was sending out some invites. I saw some for like the CPC and for the board. I think Robin was going to go and talk to the marketing committee.
Yes,
and
I
some
sent
sort of
out invites,
Go ahead.
then we'd like to invite every project at the foundation to nominate someone as well. So,
yeah.
And the press reaching out to all of the project leads.
Perfect.
For the people that have self-volunteered in the issue 432 code of conduct team, which are here mentioned as being in the interim members of the temporary COCP. Are we asking for them to take on any action to confirm this, or are we just assuming that they're all fine with that? Or we are more?
It's a good question. I think I was assuming, but we should probably confirm.
Yeah, I don't know if we had everybody in the meeting.
Yeah.
So we might assume the people there were okay, but the others.
Yeah, we did take a verbal confirmation that the folks who attended the ad hoc meeting, and we did take attendance, that they were +1, but the folks who are on that the brainstorm list who weren't, we don't assume, we shouldn't assume that they're +1 to attend to being on the group.
That sounds like an action point for someone to reach out to them and check whether they want to be on or not.
Yeah, I've made a note here to go through this, and that can be one of the things I can try to get done. Just making a quick note here. Okay. All right, great. So we'll try to make some progress on this. I'll look into it and ping folks who also have action items and see what we get done for next meeting. Great, and if anybody can help take notes, that would be awesome. Next on the list here is pull request 414. This is the what do you call it? The foundation-wide copyright guidance. You know, this has been kind of lingering for a bit. I know folks have been busy, so if there's any sort of update, let me know. Otherwise, I will try to ping Toby and see how things are with him. I don't think Brian's on the call either. Oh, I see I have an attendee here. Hang on. Oh, it's Chris. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks.
Great. So we'll move on from this one. Let me take an action item to check in with Toby and Brian. Cool. Next on the agenda is post-graduation checklist, which I think is in the same state. Or actually, so I have a little bit of an update here. There is, we were wondering how many voting members there are, and if we were over the 50% mark, which we are. There's 9 of 15 voting members who have approved this. Oh, okay, and Gary approved as well, although I'm not sure he's a voting member. But regardless, we have approvals here, so this is another one that I will check with Toby on and see how we can move this forward. Cool. So, moving on, unless folks have anything they want to add. Next on the agenda is responsible security disclosures. I know Marcin had commented on or put a thumb down on the issue. Did he comment as well?
Sorry, Joe, are you still there?
Yes. Can nobody hear me? Hello?
I can hear you. Hey, Joe, I can hear you.
Hey, Brian. Okay, good. Was I quiet for a while or no?
I heard you the whole time.
I heard
Okay,
you.
good.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, because I was talking away. Great. All right. So sorry for the interruption. Marcin commented on the meeting today that he's not able to attend this week, so I'm not sure if there's anything to update on responsible security disclosures.
I think it's still just being worked.
Okay, cool. And I know we mentioned it, Miles, last time. I don't know if there's any update or thoughts around the what was it? Is it HackerOne membership, or I can't recall now. I'm trying to look.
That's for like the foundation-wide reporting stuff.
Yeah.
There's been no movement on it that I've been involved in, but to be completely honest, I've been swamped and just catching up. So to be, really blunt to everyone, don't really expect much from me probably into mid-March. I'm coming out of 2 weeks on the road, about to go on the road 2 weeks again. So I'm about as useful as like a blob of clay.
Well, thanks for being involved regardless, and good luck. Cool. I will, we'll see if, Marcin's available next time, and see what sort of progress we have on this as well. The next item is admin policy docs, and this is something that's still on my plate as well. I have no update there, unfortunately, but we'll try to get this done soon. I'll put it on my notes here as well, so it stays at the top of my list. do this. The last item in the CPC agenda items is the project directed funding. I assume that there hasn't been movement here, but I'll ask.
I think we talked about this last week, and the next action was Brian was going to put something on the board agenda for one of the two pieces that we talked about, and hopefully we can share something after that.
Yep.
Right.
That's the plan.
Okay, perfect. Then moving on to the last two that are from the standards team repo. The first one is chartering the standards team. I don't know of any movement on this, but we do have a meeting today, and we haven't had a meeting, I think, in a month, so perhaps there will be soon. Does anyone have anything else to add on that one?
No updates from me.
I think is the topic du jour for our talk call today.
Great.
I think the plan was to get those admin docs landed, right? And then follow them for the chartering. If I remember the last discussion.
Yeah, we do need those, but I think since there's the prior art, there's still like documentation that we need to put together too.
Actually, yeah, you're right. That is I think it was putting together the scope role. I forget what it is, or the charter, whatever we called it in the docs. Putting that together would make sense.
Okay. And then the last one here is from standards group as well, the joining the Unicode consortium. Emily, we've got you on the call. Do you have anything to add?
I could say I commented on the issue, but yeah, there was no objections from the board, and the legal did a review of their policies just to make sure everything was all good, and they're all good. So Brian's going to start pulling together the application.
Great.
Just to clarify, is any action desired or expected from me on any of this?
Not that I know of. I called you out only because you opened the issue, but it sounds like Chris and Brian have been working on it, so that's great.
Yeah, I think Brian, you were going to take over from here, at least on the application front, right? Maybe you might need to reach out to Emily for something. I haven't looked at the application, so.
Yeah, I can take it from here.
There's a couple of references on the issue itself about how to get in touch with Unicode for this out of this.
Great. All right. That is the end of our agenda here. Is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss? Should we call it a wrap?
The issue I mentioned about opening nominations, I did file it. It's now number 472. If we've got time, I think we might want to start considering that.
Okay, and when you say time, you mean today, right now?
Yeah, I mean, if we are scheduled for 20 more minutes and we have no more agenda items to.
Yeah,
yeah, +1.
+1. So what are the next steps for opening nominations for next year's voting members?
As far as I understand, the next step is that we need to open an issue explicitly opening the nomination period, and then let at least a 2-week nomination period run for people to be able to self-nominate for the non-impact projects. And while doing this, also be in touch with each of the impact projects to make sure that they're aware that they ought to be nominating or renominating members for the CPC, which will then need to be ratified by the CPC voting members.
Okay. Sorry, I'm taking notes here. And so we need to open an issue in the CPC repo for non-impact as well as impact, and coordinating issues within the projects themselves as well. Sorry, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here and trying to think through the process.
I think really for the impact projects, there's no real, I was not able to at least quickly find anything set in stone about how this ought to be happening. But for the non-impact projects, we do have a relatively specific series of items that need to be happening. So this is in the governance document, election process for non-impact voting CPC members. And the first step there is that once a year, an issue will be opened in the CPC repo announcing that the period for nominations is open. And then after that, any member from one of the non-impact projects can self-nominate, emailing the chair of the CPC with their interest in running for the CPC. This period will be open for 2 weeks, at which point the CPC chair will list the nominees in the issue. Then each of the candidates listed will be asked to open an issue in the CPC repo, which includes details. And then the project will be asked to confirm membership as identified by the nominees. Then each non-impact project will nominate 2 voters through a process of their choosing. Then each voter will be able to vote for as many or as few candidates as they wish. Those candidates who receive the greatest number of votes will be confirmed as the winners. In case of a tie, In other words, all of this we have in our governance and we ought to follow it, given that we've specified it and never actually gone through it yet. So yeah, this is all going to take time over the next month, and we ought to start it as soon as possible.
Agreed. Does it, the first question that comes to my mind is non-impact versus impact. Should they be at the same time, or should we stagger them so that's
we can't stagger them due to also in the governance document, due to the bootstrap process, the term for the first year will be shortened such that the initial term for all voting members ends March 31st, 2020. Subsequent terms will be for a period of 1 year ending the following March 31st.
So there's 2 parallel processes, right, that I'm hearing. Like one is confirmation or reconfirmation that the impact project representatives will be sticking on for the next term, or they're going to source someone else from within their project, and we don't really care how they do that so long as they do it. And then the second process is the one prescribed for the elected at-large and growth projects.
Yes.
Okay, groovy. I am happy to take the action item for reconfirming / whatever the impact projects, so that I can take that AI.
Well, I'm wondering, is that something like, for example, in the Node project, that we would have an election as opposed to just, hey, confirmation or reconfirmation?
Oh, I think that's the case. Like in the Node project, it's probably an election each year. For some of the other projects, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know that all the projects. So what we did last year for this was I opened an issue on all of the impact project repositories, letting them know that they needed to do this. And then I circled back like periodically to see, how are you coming along on deciding who your rep is going to be. So I'm happy to just repeat that if that is fine.
Mm-hmm. And another question that comes to my mind is the activity of folks who are, voting members from the different projects. do we need to clarify a certain level of activity, or, if someone hasn't been active and they get reconfirmed, what does that mean? Do we need to kind of work through that process at all as well?
For the impact projects, they name their representatives, which need to be ratified by the CPC voting members before becoming a voting member. If something like that wants to be done, that's the process by which something can be done.
So a couple things that I'd like to raise here is, like, one, I think that we haven't really been we haven't really changed the time or done much work to, like, I don't know when the last time we've changed the time of this meeting is. So, I think that there's a couple people, I don't think Chris is on today, but Chris, for example, was one of the, oh no, Chris is on today. Hi, Chris. But I know that, like, your schedule has not necessarily made this time the best. So we may probably want to revisit the time. Separately from that, what we may want to try to draft and put into the governance before the next set of elections is maybe some rules around expectation of engagement. I know the NoTSC has some of this in place. Like, I think you're expected to participate in votes and participate in at least like a quarter of all the meetings or something like that. I don't think we have any bylaws or any governance.
I'm going to say I think that's already in our governance.
Okay.
Let me just have responsibilities and expectations of the CPC. It's in the CPC Charter, Section 5.
Okay. So if that's the case, then we may want to, like, I guess, reaffirm that with folks who are coming in and maybe do a better job of, like, kind of enforcing that in the next year.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think Emily's point that the confirmation might be a good checkpoint for that. Like, if somebody's renominated that hasn't been active the previous year, then it might be subject to a question going back and saying, hey, this is the requirement, wasn't met last year in our opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it should be, anyone who's coming in, whether they were already here, quote unquote, or new, we should make sure that this is clear. And the folks who perhaps haven't been as active, we can put a little extra emphasis on it. Yeah, I agree. All right. So
Miles, to answer your thing, it's not just, Section 5. This is what you were looking for is actually in Section 4, talking about voting members. Voting members are expected to make a time commitment which allows them to be responsive to CPC business, participate regularly in meetings, and to participate in all voting matters. They're all also expected to help to enable work of the regular CPC members by providing leadership, help with interactions with the board and foundation staff, and to generally help keep things moving.
Right, and that's actually supplemented by the part under regular members that says regular members remain for as long as they're active within the work of the CPC. Regular members who've not been active in GitHub, participating in meetings or other work of the CPC for 3 months may be removed from the list. So I think those two build on each other.
One thing we could do, which is maybe less than kind, but possibly necessary, is do an audit of members and inform folks, and this probably should be a private issue, but inform folks probably across, like individually, but maybe even, make that data available to CPC members about, like, who is, like currently in good standing and who isn't. Like, probably would be good for people to know who is and isn't in good standing, both from voting members and regular members.
This is Robin. Can I just add one thing on past participation? I think that doesn't help if we're trying to advocate for diversity on the CPC. So I just think ask for people to be thoughtful on how do we reach some of those goals that we would want to have in place.
All these goals are not past participation. They're when you join the CPC, the expectations for participation.
Okay.
The only thing we do have in terms of past participation was around being in one of the member projects for 3 months.
Yeah, to clarify my point, Robin, because maybe I miscommunicated. My concern is more specifically about current members of the committee who have not been basically coming to the plate. There are some individuals who have not attended a single meeting or participated in a single vote.
Right.
I think there's probably a more inclusive way to handle this, but I do think that it's important that we, like, are aware of who of our voting members and regular members have been active, and for those who haven't, kind of being aware that there's an expectation that if they continue in their role, that they kind of step up that participation. If I recall from the governance, I'm guessing we probably, based on a node, the amount of activity is not super regular. I think the expectation will be that you participate in most votes or most activities that require engagement and show up to at least 1 in 4 meetings. So I think that people who aren't coming to the plate to that, it is a problem for our ability to be an active committee.
Yeah, I understand that. I also like Jory's earlier point, I think it was on travel funding, to think about participating in a more inclusive way. So folks who perhaps are running some of the, the social channels or other things, not just pull requests and code.
Absolutely. And for what it's worth, I think the last time that we talked about that, the committee was open to onboarding new folks from different areas. It just, we thought it was a bad idea to start enumerating things if we didn't know it. So maybe something that we could do is document explicitly there that, like, hey, there's this kind of like 3-month thing that we have right now, but if you'd like to be involved, you can always come and like reach out and try to, like, I'll think about wording that is less putting the onus on individuals, but the spirit of it is we're very open to it. It just, we don't know what those cases are, so we didn't want to start enumerating possibilities that were unknown.
I love that idea. Great. Thanks.
For the non-impact projects, the process does not quite specify it, but it would probably be most suitable if the CPC chair filed the issue about opening the nominations period, because there's an action on them a little bit later about adding information to that specific issue.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing too is, so say for example, I'm the chair currently. Through the elections, what happens if I'm no longer the chair? How does that sort of process work in terms of, I mean, I guess you would, we would just have another election and then the new chair would take over any of those sort of responsibilities?
I do believe that you'll be chair at least until the end of March, and then it's on the new board, new CPC voting members to select the next chair. In the same sense, it would be really, really good for us to at least get some voting members ratified or elected by the end of March, because otherwise we can't do the things without any voting members in April.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, it basically says their annual elections to select the CPC chair, the CPC chairperson and director.
Yep. All right, great. Cool. So we have some action items from there. I'll start to work on this as well. And I think to some of the other previous points too, as we do work through figuring out who representatives might be, any way we could drive more diversity in the voices at the table, I think is really appreciated. Cool.
A useful tool for just that will probably be the exact message that Jory will be sending out to the impact projects about telling them that they need to select new representatives or confirm the ones they've already got, and in that message maybe inform them that diversity is a nice thing. I don't know.
That's
Not
something
my
I'm
letters.
happy to like draft and share with the CPC mailing list, you know, just to get, you know, eyes on before I go posting.
Sounds good.
Great. All right, cool. Well, is there anything else we want to discuss on this topic, or should we call it a day? Great. Cool. Well, excellent meeting. Thank you, Emily, for bringing that up, and I'm glad that we talked more about it and can start moving forward on it. But otherwise, I think we'll call it a wrap, and we'll meet up again next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Summit meeting. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Woohoo. See you there.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.